All of this with Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, the former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, former Delta Force commander. He doesn't brag about this. Purple Heart, all sorts of honors and awards. I mean, man, oh man, the real deal. General, this back and forth with China, where is this going? Because I don't think it's just me reading the provocative actions of China of late, down to exact replica models of our battleships, and the threatening actions over Taiwan. To say nothing of what they're doing on the business side, even going after some of their biggest players, even if it hurts them. What the heck are they up to?
Well, I think that China's agenda is very well established, and I think it's been articulated in many ways by the Chinese themselves, and that is essentially global dominance, diplomatically, economically, militarily. And make no mistake that China is going after Taiwan. Now, unlike your previous commentator, I don't think that it'll be right after the Olympics, because the next fall, the Chinese Communist Party will have their 5-year meeting. They will determine who's going to lead the country and what the policies are going to be in the country, and nothing is going to happen, at least militarily, nothing is going to happen with regards to Taiwan prior to that. But after that, particularly given that they see a very weakened administration here in the United States, I think that it is very likely that they could make a military move on Taiwan.
It could be a pre-move on Taiwan, right? I mean, you could go after islands administered by the Taiwanese. Would we be obligated to help in the event that China pulls something like that against Taiwan, not invading Taiwan per se, but just taking over these islands that Taiwan effectively runs?
Yeah, that depends on whether you're looking for a moralistic answer or for a treaty answer. The answer from a treaty perspective is no. We have no obligation to come to their aid militarily other than to provide them with military equipment and materiel. Then if you look at it from a moral perspective and the kind of ally that they've been to us since World War II, you might come up with a different answer to that yes, the United States should step in and help Taiwan against the Chinese.
General, I wanted to pick your brain on this because you're a great student of military history. It's often said that the Cuban Missile Crisis during the Kennedy administration was born of his debacle with the Bay of Pigs. Not that was necessarily all on him. He was following, a plan that was hatched in the Eisenhower administration. Be that as it may, it encouraged the then Soviet Union to do what it did, and they miscalculated, trying to handicap the response of JFK. Could the collapse of Afghanistan be prompting this provocative, series of moves by the Chinese, to say nothing of the Russians, who last time I checked had 100,000 troops just off the Ukraine?
There is no question, Neil, that the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, and even the North Koreans see us as being much weaker than we were under the leadership of Donald Trump. They never knew exactly where Trump was going to come down on anything, and I think that what they have seen is in terms of how we left Afghanistan and the fact that we not only did not take care of our allies by notifying them of what we were going to do, and we left them in a lurch, but we also left people behind that we were pledged to bring out, many of whom were American citizens. I think that shows weak leadership in the United States. I think it shows not only weak domestic leadership, but I think it shows weak international leadership as well. And I think as a result of that, China is emboldened. And we've said that before on your program, and I think China is emboldened, as well as our other adversaries, and our allies are quite frankly very skeptical of what we would be willing to do in the future in terms of our alliances that we have with them, the relationships we have with them, and so forth. So I think China is emboldened by what they see as a weakened administration.
General, while I have you, and I don't want to pop like a surprise question with you, but I've been reading Jonathan Karl's book on the final days of the Trump administration, and in it, he talks about concern that those around President Trump at the time were very concerned about not only the January 6th insurrection, but maybe exploring a way to turn over his authority. That Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, had talked about invoking the 25th Amendment, concerned about this and that he could do the country harm. We don't know the veracity of that report, by the way. I think both men have denied that. But was there, to your knowledge, a concern during that time? And do you think it would be justified at that time that the president was going too far, that he looked like a loose cannon?
Yeah, I have only heard bits and pieces of what you're talking about, Neil, and I think based on the fact that I have not read it, I don't know enough about it, I'm going to, for the first time, decline to give you a direct answer on that.
All right, I only mention it again, General, because other authors have explored this and what the atmosphere was like at the White House. I guess we'll never know. But there are concerns when a president is deemed to go too far. The whole 25th Amendment thing, whether it's this president or any other president, that's meant when the president is deemed to be incapacitated or compromised, maybe like a Woodrow Wilson suffers a stroke. Do you see that being utilized much?
You know, I'm not aware of when it has been utilized. And look, I think it's a good amendment that would allow us to remove a president that was incapacitated or quite frankly, incapable. And of course, the other way to remove a president is through impeachment. But I think it's a good amendment. The thing is, I'm still wondering why Nancy Pelosi talked about the 25th Amendment being tested for future presidents. She said, this is not about Donald Trump, this is for future presidents. I'm still pondering what that was all about, and was she prescient and seeing that maybe we might have a president that was impaired, cognitively impaired some way. I don't know, but that was an interesting set of circumstances there, and some interesting vocabulary coming from her.
Yeah, and you wonder who she was talking to and what she was sort of telegraphing. But yeah, you're right. There are a lot of unanswered questions to that period. Maybe we'll never know all those details. General, thank you very, very much. Good seeing you. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving.
Good seeing you. Same to you, Neil.